One of the most astounding cases in reincarnation research comes from a 5-year-old Hindu boy who remembered the life of a Muslim family with such detail that even researchers following a strictly scientific approach acknowledged this case goes beyond all rational explanation. Anurag Saxena's story not only supports the existence of reincarnation, but also shows that souls can continue their journey across religious and cultural boundaries. Born in 1986, Anurag Saxena grew up in a well-to-do Brahmin family in Bareilly, Uttar Pradesh state, India. His father, Rajesh Saxena, was a university professor, and his mother, Sunita, was a housewife. The family strictly followed Hindu traditions, regularly visited temples, and raised Anurag according to Vedic customs. When Anurag turned 3, strange things began to catch his parents' attention. The little boy often cried when he had to participate in family puja ceremonies and said that he was not Hindu but Muslim. Initially, the parents thought this was just a temporary phase, but Anurag increasingly insisted that he was Asif Khan and belonged to another family. Anurag completely changed when he started talking about his previous life, recalled Sunita Saxena. He said things that a 3-year-old child simply couldn't have known. He described what it was like to pray facing Mecca and how to properly perform wudu rituals. The little boy not only knew Islamic religious practices in detail, but also used Arabic words that no family member spoke. When he smelled Arabic food, he became excited and said he loved to eat these when he was Asif. The turning point came when 4-year-old Anurag began telling specific details about his previous life. He claimed to have lived as Asif Khan in Moradabad city, which was about 50 kilometers from Bareilly. He described the house where he lived, the surrounding streets, and even named family members by name. Anurag described certain parts of Moradabad so accurately that we decided we had to go there and see if there was any truth to his words, said Rajesh Saxena. Although we are Hindu Brahmins, and this whole thing contradicts our faith, we couldn't ignore what we heard. In 1990, the Saxena family traveled to Moradabad, taking 4-year-old Anurag with them. The little boy navigated the city with such confidence as if he had grown up there. He led them to the Kasai Mohalla neighborhood, where he claimed to have lived as Asif Khan. There they indeed found a Muslim family named Khan, who had lost their 19-year-old son, Asif, a few years earlier. The young man had died in a car accident in 1985, exactly 1 year before Anurag's birth. When I saw Anurag, I almost fainted, said Rashida Khan, Asif's mother. This Hindu little boy knew things about my son that only we could have known. He described Asif's favorite clothes, the arrangement of his room, and even what animals we kept in the yard. Dr. Kirti Swaroop Rawat, the famous Indian reincarnation researcher who documented more than 200 similar cases, took over the investigation of Anurag's case in the spring of 1991. Rawat worked as a colleague of American professor Ian Stevenson and examined reincarnation memories according to strict scientific protocol. In Anurag's case, it was immediately apparent that we were dealing with something extraordinary, wrote Dr. Rawat. The little boy could talk about Asif's life with such detail that it was impossible to attribute it to chance. He even knew the nicknames of Asif's friends, which the family hadn't mentioned to us. During the investigation, it was revealed that Anurag knew exactly where Asif worked, at a local auto repair shop. When they took him to the workshop, he immediately recognized Asif's former boss, Mohsin, and told him about incidents that only Asif and Mohsin could remember. This little child told me things that only Asif could have known, testified Mohsin Ahmed. He remembered the incident when we were fixing a truck together and the engine almost fell on us. I had never told anyone else about this incident. one of the most interesting discoveries of Dr. Rawat's research was that Anurag not only had access to Asif's memories, but also inherited certain of his habits. The little boy insisted on eating in the Muslim way, eating meat with his hands and avoiding pork, even though he grew up in a Hindu family. Anurag's eating habits were completely Muslim, noted Dr. Rawat. When he saw beefsteak, he exclaimed with joy and said this was his favorite food when he was Asif. This is an unimaginable reaction in a Brahmin family. The question of cultural and religious transition made Anurag's case particularly interesting. Dr. Stevenson had previously documented cases where children remembered previous lives from different religious backgrounds. But Anurag's case was particularly striking due to the deep differences between Hindu and Muslim traditions. This case points to the fact that the soul is not bound to religious or cultural identity, wrote Dr. Stevenson. In Anurag's case, it is clearly visible that the soul of a Muslim young man was reborn in a Hindu family, and this caused no problem at the soul level. Anurag's behavior also contained elements that pointed to Asif's personality. In his previous life, he was an auto mechanic, and in this life he also showed extraordinary interest in machines and vehicles. Already at 3 years old, he was able to identify different car types and performed toy repairs on his toy cars. If you also believe that the soul's journey transcends religious and cultural boundaries, subscribe so you don't miss the latest reincarnation stories. One of the most shocking moments came when Anurag was taken to the place where Asif died. The little boy immediately recognized the location and described the circumstances of the accident in detail. He even knew what clothes Asif wore that day and what he was doing just before the accident. Asif was heading home from the workshop that evening when a drunk driver hit him, said Abdul Khan, Asif's father. Anurag accurately described the route Asif was taking and even knew the little tea house where he stopped along the way. Nobody had told him these details. During Dr. Rawat's investigations, he checked 93 different statements that Anurag made about Asif's life. Of these, 89 proved to be completely accurate. In 5 cases, the information could not be verified, but not a single statement proved false. This ratio is extraordinarily high, even compared to Stevenson's most convincing cases, wrote Dr. Rawat. In Anurag's case, it is practically impossible that this could be about chance or learned information. One of the most touching aspects of the case was how the two families related to each other. Although there is often tension between Hindu and Muslim communities in India, Anurag's case brought the Saxena and Khan families closer together. Because of Anurag, we also think differently about death and life, said Rashida Khan. If my son's soul was truly reborn in a Hindu family, then perhaps religious differences are not as important as we thought. Dr. Tucker, who later took over Stevenson's legacy, devoted a special study to Anurag's case. According to him, this case is one of the most convincing evidence that consciousness survives physical death. Anurag's case perfectly meets every scientific criterion we use to verify reincarnation memories, wrote Dr. Tucker. The level of detail, accuracy, and verifiability is such that it is practically impossible to find an alternative explanation. The long-term effects of the case were also noteworthy. Anurag maintained his connection with the Khan family into adulthood and regularly visited them. Although he grew up in a Hindu family, he never lost his interest in Islam and held deep respect for both religions. In Anurag's case, we can see that reincarnation does not cause identity confusion, but enriches the personality, explained Dr. Rawat. He was able to integrate both religious traditions without losing his inner harmony. Today, more than 30 years later, Anurag Saxena works as an engineer and has 2 children. He never lost his connection to the memory of his previous life and actively participates in reincarnation research. His case inspired the documentation of other similar stories in India and worldwide. Anurag's story shows that love and human connections are stronger than any religious or cultural barriers, wrote Dr. Rawat in his final report. His case forever changed our thinking about reincarnation. Indian reincarnation research today gained international recognition largely due to the impact of Anurag's case. Dr. Rawat and his colleagues documented numerous similar cases in which children remembered previous lives that crossed religious boundaries. Anurag Saxena's story points to the fact that the soul's journey is much more complex and richer than traditional religious frameworks suggest. His case is eternal proof that love, memory, and human connections transcend all earthly limitations. If you are also interested in those mysterious stories that show that our existence is much deeper than we would think, follow our channel and be part of this magical journey in discovering the secrets of consciousness.